The question is, do we need anything beyond that for this God? What does the God bring you other than the idea that this is a tiebreaker who's on my side all the time? Like, that doesn't mean anything really.
Right. I'm not talking about the epistemological issue, Paul. I'm talking about the ontological issue.
The fact that we are a social species and our survival advantage is that we are social, and the more we work together, and we do need to have our own individual selfishness in order to stay alive, to reproduce, but we try to curtail that, again, for the survivability of the race. And if we don't survive, then our species doesn't continue. That is enough of a reason to say, hey, you know what? We're going to look at someone who's strong and altruistic. That is going to be a hero, because that meets both of our survival needs. They are strong. They might be a good provider. They can help protect us. But also, that person, gives himself, not necessarily gives their life, although they might. Frank gives some good examples in the book of people in real life who've given their lives. That doesn't need a grounding beyond the survivability and the other things.
So
I know that
in a nutshell, it's a kind of social kind of evolution, really, that drives our admiration for those kinds of figures, heroic figures who
right. And I think the cross-cultural nature of it tells us that this is part of our survivability. This is part of our biology, not just the cultural context, because these archetypes tend to flow across cultures and time. So again, that's the undeniable part where we start to speculate as to why this is the case. So.
Frank, quick response before we go to our first break.
Yeah, I this is the interesting part of the conversation for me, because I want to know the grounding of morality. If there is no God, then how can we say that, say, the Allies were right and the Nazis were wrong? If the Allies are trying to protect their population and the Nazis are trying to protect their population, how do we adjudicate between those two? If the atheistic worldview is right and there is no purpose to life, then how can we say that it is the Allies who are right because they have the more noble purpose and the Nazis are wrong because they don't?
Well, the only way we can adjudicate anything is by agreeing to an adjudicator and agreeing to a set of rules that we will go to an arbiter. You can't just declare that the ref is on your side and therefore the ref will always rule on your team. I think one of the things, you need to, for anyone to agree that the Nazis were wrong and the Allies were right, you would need to at least agree upon some goals of human flourishing or some goals of equality. And you've talked about this before. You know that goals can get you to a certain, explain, epistemologically how we get there. The question is, do we need anything beyond that for this God? What does the God bring you other than the idea that this is a tiebreaker who's on my side all the time? Like, that doesn't mean anything really.
Right. I'm not talking about the epistemological issue, Paul. I'm talking about the ontological issue. Let's suppose Hitler had won World War II and convinced everybody that murdering Jews, homosexuals, gypsies, and Jehovah's Witnesses was a good thing. Would it be a good thing? If you had a majority saying, yeah, this is a good thing.
Well, that depends on how you define good, obviously. And you might, again, if the people who lived in such a world no longer agreed that persecution and these kind of things were wrong, then they wouldn't. And that means they would be abandoning some of their biology. They'd be abandoning the idea of empathy. They'd be abandoning the idea of preservation as a species, which seems the reason why we feel like it's instinctive that would be the case is because it's built into our biology. I guess you and I just disagree. I don't think we need anything beyond the natural to have the ontological step. I understand you do, but I just don't see it, and I would love to be to help to show why that's even necessary. A tiebreaker doesn't make it. The fact that we would need a tiebreaker doesn't make it necessary.
I'm not really talking about a tiebreaker. I'm talking about what is the good. If it's just my opinion or your opinion or Hitler's opinion or Churchill's opinion, then it's just subjective. Is there an objective standard of good beyond humanity? It seems if there isn't, it's just one person's opinion against another.